Hello everyone. So today we'll be talking about abstract classes and interfaces in Java. We'll go through an activity that will help us understand those two concepts. How do they help us in solving real life scenarios? So to start with, let's say I have a client who has a shop, and this shop would like to process payments from clients, from customers, different types of payments. So let's say we start with processing, for example, credit card. Then I will write the code for how to process the credit card. Then they will come back later and will ask us to provide another way for, or another method for collecting payment. So I will, and another if statement and so on. So the problem with this one here is that the more we get payment methods, then the more if statements we will add, and it will be very hard to maintain the code. Another way to do it is, maybe one could say I will create a base class for the payment. I will call it base payment, and then inside that I will authorize. As you can see, the implementation for the authorization here is default authorization, which is as good as nothing because I don't really know which payment I'm authorization, which payment method I'm authorizing actually. And then for each of the payment methods I would add a child class. So this looks better than the previous one. However, we have a small problem here. The problem is with the authorize method in the base payment class. Why this is problematic? For two reasons. Number one, if by mistake the client creates an instance of the base payment, then they might end up authorizing an illegal payment or maybe invalid payment. So what do I need to do here? I need to stop first the client from instantiating the base payment. That's number one. Number two, I need somehow to force child classes to implement the authorize, but I have a problem here that I don't have the full implementation details in the payment in the parent class. So how do we work around this? How do we solve this problem? The first one, let's start by finding a solution for not having the implementation for the authentication method in the parent class. So how do we do it? Let's start one step at a time. Okay, now this is, all of it is no longer needed. So let me delete this all so we don't have problems later. And then I'll start from scratch. I will create a new parent class. I will call it base payment, and this base payment class will serve as my base payment class. All I need here is a transaction ID, and then a constructor where in the constructor I will initialize the transaction ID. So this dot transaction ID equal, I will generate a random number, java dot util dot uuid dot random, and then dot toString. Okay, so this will help me generating the transaction ID. The second thing that I need here is I need to have an authentication method. So my authentication method would be the following: public, or first let me have a method to display the transaction. So I will call it log transaction ID. I will simply display the transaction ID. And now here comes our problem. I have the authenticate method, and here is my problem. I do not know what to do here. I don't know. Basically, I don't have enough details to implement the authenticate method. And I know I need the method, that's the thing. So what do I do here? First, since I have no information about the body, I remove the body. And then the only solution here is to declare or to declare the function as an abstract function, which means abstract is another name for incomplete. So I don't have enough details. I know I need it. So how can I do it? I will declare it as an abstract method, which is incomplete. Immediately once you declare the method abstract, the class will also be should be declared as abstract class. Why? Because I cannot basically release an incomplete class. So abstract is a synonym for incomplete, which means the class itself is incomplete, which means I cannot release the class. That's why we have to declare the class as an abstract class. What does this do to the class? How does it help us? Remember, we said the first problem we have is that we cannot allow users to create by mistake an instance of base payment because it really means nothing. It has no details about the payment. So let me go to the main class now and try to create a base payment. So as you can see, I cannot create because simply it's an abstract class. So the application will not allow me. So we solved the first problem. So again, what we did now, we created a base class for the payment. We declared it as an abstract because we have an authenticate method that is missing some details. And because of that, we are not able to instantiate the class now. So how do we solve this problem? The only solution here is to have a child class, and that's why we started with this scenario. So now I have credit card as a payment method, and this will extend the base provider. So as you can see, immediately the class is complaining. Why? Because once we extend an abstract class, sorry, not base provider, it's called base payment. Sorry for that. So now the class is complaining because it directly it needs the implementation for the missing information for that abstract method. So a credit card is not abstract and does not override the method authenticate, which is in the base payment here. So the only way here to solve this problem is to either implement, or if you say I don't have also the details here, then you will end up declaring this as an abstract class, and then again you will need another chart. But now we'll implement the method. So how we'll do it? We'll insert code, we'll implement the method. As you can see, authenticate is here. So let's authenticate. So how will we authenticate the method? Let's say we will maybe usually for credit cards, what they do is verifying CVV and expiry date. Once done, then the method, the authentication is done. Okay, so now we authenticated. One thing here is since we are processing payment, so that's why we have the application, we want to process payment, then it would be a good idea to also enable our application to collect payments. I want to separate those two functionalities. I want the class, the blueprint for the class to have only the features for the class, and then later on I can add additional features if I want. So for that, the ideal way to do it is to have the collection of payment in a separate place, and that place ideally would be called an interface. So basically the interface is a place where we can add features, okay, and it's whoever wants to activate or to have those features, all they need is to sign a contract with this interface, or in other words, they need to, we say, implement the interface. So in my case, my interface would be called payable, and in this interface I will have a function called collect payment, and with a certain amount. Okay, as you can see, inside the interface we have abstract methods, because we don't have a body for the method, but we don't need to add the keyword abstract. This is by definition, so whether you add it or no, it does not really make any difference. The code will still compile. So that's one. So this is one. Now the question is, how do I use this interface? How do I enable, let's say, my class to have this function or this feature which is collecting payment? In order to do that, let's say I want to enable all my classes to be able to collect payment. So what we do is we come to the parent and we ask the parent to implement the interface. So as you can see, with inheritance we use extends, and here we implement. So once you ask the class, the base class, to implement, everything works fine here, because the class anyway is an abstract class. But let me show you what happens with the credit card. Remember a few seconds ago we had no error with the class, but now we have a syntax error. Let's see what is this about. It says credit card is not abstract and does not override collect payment method. So again, it immediately forces me to implement the method. How do I do it? Directly insert code, and then we implement the authenticate method. Alright, so now what do I do? So for me, first I would like to authenticate. That's how we usually do it, sorry. The second thing, I will display maybe something like charged ED plus amount via credit card. Okay, and finally I will log the transaction just to display the transaction ID. What's the name of the method? Log transaction ID. Okay, log transaction ID. And that's it. So now if you check, if we go back to the main class, this is still not allowed. However, what I can do is I can create credit card. Credit card, an instance of credit card, and then I can collect the payment, and then I will give the amount. So if you run now, you will see that this is working perfectly fine. The nice thing is also, instead of creating this as, I can create it as a payable object. It will also work with us. So both are acceptable, either this or that one. Both will be working fine. Okay, so let's take one more example. Let's say the client comes again and tells us we would like now to add another payment method, which is PayPal. Remember, in the first initial solution we ended up adding another if statement. Now, no, I can make it more elegant. So I will add another class, This class would be the new payment method, the PayPal. It will do exactly the same as we did, so it will extend the base provider. Immediately it will give me the error, so I will go ahead and copy all of this from the credit card, paste it here. Okay, but what I will do is the following. I keep writing base provider, it's called base payment. Okay, so base payment. Now, just for simplicity, we will change maybe here checking PayPal authentication service, and then charged via PayPal. Okay, PayPal, and that's it. So as you can see, it's very neat, elegant, and very simple. Every time you have a new payment method, all you need is to do the following. So with that, what we ended up with is the following. We have now an interface that contains the collect payment method. Whoever wants to collect payments, all they need to do is to implement the interface. And in our base class, in our parent, we don't have much details about authentication. We don't want the client to instantiate base payment, so we declared the authenticate method as abstract method. With that, we had to declare the class as abstract2, and thus we stopped the client from instantiating. The solution would be to have child classes, and that's how we created the credit card, and we created the PayPal, and with in the main class, in the driver, we can create different types of payments. So let me now, since we have another payment method, let me try it. And as you can see, checking PayPal authentication service, and it will print the transaction ID. And that's it. So hopefully with this you'll be able to understand the concept of abstract classes and interfaces. Once you're confident about your skills, I would like you to try the following challenge. So the challenge would be adding another payment method, which is for cryptocurrencies. So we'll add another class, cryptocurrency, exactly like we did for credit card and PayPal. We will implement authenticate. We will find a way to authenticate cryptocurrencies. So you would follow exactly the same steps. And to take it one level further, you can also practice adding another interface. So if now we would like to allow our application to refund, then we could add an interface called refundable with a refund method, exactly like we did with collect payment. But instead we want to do the reverse now. We want to refund. So give it a go, try, and what you can do here is you can either allow all child classes to be refundable, or maybe you could also say I want only my credit card to implement this interface. So try it and let me know how it goes. Alright, so that's it for now. I will be seeing you in another video. Have a good one.